The most inspiring faith story I've ever heard was at the clergy wellness conference that some of you have heard of called Credo. The story was told by Winnie Varghese, who is currently a priest in the Diocese of Atlanta. It was inspiring not because of any particular experience that she had had, but because of the story's narrative arc. She started with the resurrection, and she started with Thomas in today's gospel. And then she told the story about how Thomas, tradition has it, traveled to India, bringing the gospel with him, and how Thomas started a faith community in South India. And then she talked about the development of the Mar Thoma church in the Kerala region of South India. And then she talked about the Anglican Church of South India. And she talked about her family being part of that church for generations and generations. And then she talked about how when she was a very young child, her family moved to New York and became part of the Mar Thoma tradition in Long Island. Those of you who remember Bishop Itty may remember that he came from that tradition in Long Island. She talked about her family putting down roots in the Episcopal Church. She talked about coming out. She talked about the experience of her call to the priesthood. And it was one continuous thread from Thomas to this woman in a conference center in North Carolina telling her story. And she managed to make all of us feel like we too were part of that story. So whenever I hear this story, I think about Winnie and her story. And this past week, I have also been imagining that I've been imagining what if the spirit of Thomas was present for this story, present for all the stories of the unfolding faith communities from the moment we heard about in this morning's gospel to the present moment. And I asked myself, using the popular trope, what would Thomas today say to his younger self? And I decided that Thomas would say, hold on, get your hands on Jesus, grab hold of that hole in his side, and don't let go. The Thomas of today might continue over the next couple of millennia. The church that you are going to be part of building is going to become unrecognizable. The church is going to become a bureaucratic institution dedicated to self-preservation, protection of property, perpetuation of practices that don't seem to have much to do at all with what is happening with Jesus in this moment. The church that Jesus left to Thomas and to the others who encountered the risen Lord is about resurrection, radical hope, and subversive, revolutionary love. If we don't find that in the church today, how do we get it? So let's go back to this morning's gospel in that house where the disciples were hiding from the religious authorities. The good news of resurrection has left Thomas longing for connection. My guess is that when he challenges Jesus, he's not looking for proof. He's looking for touch. He might have heard Mary say, I have seen the Lord. The disciples told Thomas, we have seen the Lord. Thomas missed it. He longs for that same connection. We are bodily people. We are reminded of this with the psalm that we just prayed and that wonderful image of oil running down our chins. We're reminded of it in the first letter of John, which starts out, that which we have seen and heard and felt with our hands. This is the connection that Thomas longs for. If we are the ones about whom Jesus says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe," where is our connection? What Jesus leaves for us is his presence in community. Jesus leaves his disciples with a vision of community that is built around justice and the reign of God. As we will encounter in the coming weeks of gospel texts, Jesus leaves us two mandates: witness to resurrection and gather community in the way that Jesus gathered community. All of Jesus's earthly ministry was about creating community, offering us an alternative way of living together. Being in community is one of the ways that we resist the oppression and degradation of our present time. Community is one of the ways that we hold on to Jesus, as Thomas wanted to hold on to Jesus. The book of Acts is the story of the unfolding work of building Christian community. It is the story of the first disciples on the ground without Jesus, telling their faith stories, creating community, and striving to please God. The star of the book of Acts is the Holy Spirit, who is both the glue and the power of this new community of Jesus followers. The community we hear about this morning in the book of Acts sounds either too good to be true or disturbing, depending on your perspective. The whole group was of one heart and soul. Everything they owned was held in common, and there was not a needy person among them. Somebody on social media suggested that this reading should end with comrades. My guess is that when we measure ourselves and the communities that we belong to against this description, we probably come up short. Consider instead this Acts community as an illustration not just of particular practice, but of the power of God among believers. It is a slice of life in Christian community at its very best. Life in the early church, as we will read in the book of Acts, was not all sharing and mutual love. Like much community life, it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Through thick and thin, though, we live out our faith in Jesus by being part of a community like this one, with all of its quirks and foibles. Long ago and far away, I learned some lessons of community from a gym. It wasn't an open gym where people work out on their own. It's one of those places that just offers classes. My hatred of any kind of gym class probably goes back to multiple traumas in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. But I signed up for a trial class at that gym because one of its members occasionally attended the church where I was serving. She told me about her gym. I liked that the place had a great website and a really cool social media presence. But what actually got me to sign up for my first class was that she just kept on inviting me. And she kept on talking about how much she loved her gym. They used the language of tribe a lot. The minute I walked in the door, I got introduced to 3 or 4 very friendly people, not too friendly because I'm an Episcopalian, but I immediately felt at home. When I came back later that week, everyone called me by name and offered to help me with whatever I needed help with. I was hooked. It wasn't the workouts so much as the promise of community. Then, of course, over time, I realized that in order to get all that benefit, I had to work at it. I had to show up, first of all, even when I didn't feel like it. I had to contribute financially so the place would be there for me and for all the others who needed it. And I had to be as helpful and encouraging to others as they all were to me, even when I didn't feel like it. I obviously found this to be a great metaphor for the community life that is both Jesus's gift to us and his charge to us. Don't even get me started on the metaphorical aches and pains that emerge as you commit more deeply. If life on this side of the resurrection leaves us longing with Thomas for connection, consider Jesus's gift and charge to us of gathering and being communities of disciples. Are there ways that we are being nudged to venture in more deeply or to stretch in some way? Where is the power of God at work? How do we share that power with one another? These are questions for an Easter community. As we gather at this table to taste and see, let us celebrate the communities where God calls us to be the church in the world, proclaiming the great love of a connected people.